Welcome to the Reawakening Ancient Feminine Wisdom in Pregnancy, Birth, and Motherhood Summit. I'm your host, Nancy Lucina, and today Lizzie Rae Rose will be joining us. Lizzie serves women worldwide through individual sessions and group programs, helping them awaken their magic and innate healing abilities. She is the founder of the Awake Woman Apothecary, a line of flower essence remedies for spiritual awakening. Her healing style is a special blend of flower essence therapy, channeling, intuitive counseling, and ceremony. Lizzie is currently working on a book about fairy consciousness that is expected to release this year. In today's conversation, Lizzie and I talk about spirit babies, the souls of children that often visit mothers before conception, how giving birth can be an initiation to becoming a devotee of the goddess, and how flower essences can support us throughout pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we have with us Lizzie Rae Rose from LizzieRaeRose.com. Thank you so much for being here, Lizzie.
You're so welcome, Nancy. It's so nice to be here with you.
We're really giddy about the topics that we're going to cover today. I can already tell. Okay, so I want to jump right in. Tell us about spirit babies and your experience with conceiving your spirit baby. For those people watching who may not know what we're talking about, maybe first say what you perceive as to be a spirit baby in the first place.
Sure. So a spirit baby is basically the soul of your incoming child who is or child after child. Like, you know, sometimes a spirit baby shows up out of birth order. And sometimes they show up, they'll appear masculine but come in as with female genitalia, I guess you could say, or vice versa. So like it's sometimes interesting, but anyways, it's a spirit that you can communicate with, like a guide or a saint or that type of thing, that is actually your incoming child. So when I first came into contact with my son, I didn't know he was my spirit baby until I was actually maybe 7 months pregnant, actually. And I met him in a forest, and I had just started doing an audio course called Opening the Channel by Sanea Roman, which is a really beautiful, she has a book and then she has an audio course, and channeling is a skill where you basically like bring through information from source or guides and beings and angels and that type of thing. And so I had in one of the exercises, there's an exercise to contact one of your guides. And so I did the exercise, and I met Adam in the forest. He said his name was Adam. And when I was pregnant, I basically came to realize, like, wow, this is my child. Like, this is my baby. And then we named him Adam.
I got chills when you were telling me.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is that's my kid. There's another one like knocking on the door right now. I don't know what her name is yet, but I can feel her. And oftentimes when women want to get pregnant, sometimes there's this inexplicable urge inside them where they're like, I don't know why I want to get pregnant right now. This doesn't make sense why I want to get pregnant right now. But I feel this pressure. And oftentimes that pressure will be deflected to the parents, like oh, my mom really wants me a grandchild. Right. It's like, and often we don't actually look to the fact that there are just like souls batting down the doors, being like, let us in, let us in, let us in. Because it's such a privilege to be. We don't realize like it is a privilege to be in a human body. You know, I'll say sometimes, Jesus doesn't have an Instagram account, or Isis doesn't have an Instagram account, right? It's like these figures they're not in physical bodies right now. Like you can't send Bridget an email, or Morgan Le Fay an email. You just can't, because they're not in bodies. Yeah. And so all these souls want to come in. And so sometimes there's this feeling of a little bit of pressure. And as time goes on, by time I mean pregnancy,
Yeah.
as pregnancy moves on, oftentimes women will feel a connection to the spirit baby less and less. And that is really normal and really perfect. Around 7, 8, 9 months, third trimester, the babies are embodied. Like they're coming really fully into the body, and also a lot of just the energetics of pregnancy are moving you down,
Yeah.
down.
Descending.
It's a descension process.
Yeah.
And a lot of new age spirituality and like it's all about going up, but pregnancy is down. And so often by the time the baby is born, there's a different feeling in the body where you're not connecting with an angel or guide or a being, you're connecting with a human inside your body, but it's just almost telepathic. So it shifts from almost a guide like relationship to just a very special, evolved mother-child relationship that then can continue when the child is out. My son and I still communicate telepathically sometimes, and it drives my husband crazy. But as he gets older, it's happening less and less, I'd say, especially able to actually just communicate with words.
Right.
So as language comes in, then the telepathy, this like soul connection, I should go like this, heart connection seems to just shift over to words. And also in my experiences, at least in my personal experiences, the baby, when they're born, would often not communicate in words. It would often be pictures. Because I don't know developmentally like how a child is thinking. They're not thinking with linear language. And so why would they be communicating with us telepathically in linear language?
Right.
They're going to be showing so he would show me a picture of a teething toy or a picture of a food.
Wow, cool.
And so even now, sometimes my husband will be like, Adam, can show mommy a picture? And he'll show me a picture, and then we can. I don't think
beautiful.
these are skills that are unusual. I mean, I've been pretty psychically open since I was a child, but like at the same time, I know other moms have experiences like this too. And you don't have to have some like advanced spiritual practice in order to just communicate intuitively with your child.
That's a really good point. That's beautiful. You brought up the energetics of pregnancy, which is something I wanted to ask you about today. Like, what was your experience being pregnant? And also, I know that you've worked with pregnant women in your business. What do you find are the commonalities in terms of like what's happening energetically, and how can we work with that in a way that doesn't just drive us crazy, in a way that actually we feel like we're able to move through these things with more ease and grace?
Yeah. Well, there's two things. The first is that descension process, so coming more and more and more and more into the body. The second one that I notice a lot is that women seem to have with their children, there's this window for healing that takes place where if you as a soul had any issues, feelings, not even issues, just feelings about coming to earth, you might feel that tension as you, or subconsciously or consciously, as you think about having a child, as you, and then like all throughout your child's life. And so pregnancy becomes this space where like oftentimes people will have deep memories, deep feelings, lots of discomfort that mirrors the way that a soul might be feeling as they've just decided to incarnate on the earth plane. And so working with the energetics of that, like going back, like what do you think you were experiencing, or what do you feel you were experiencing before you decided to come here? What was going on in your parents' life when you were conceived? What was going on during your mother's pregnancy? What do you think you might have been feeling about entering into the world? And so like throughout each trimester, it's an opportunity to go deeper and deeper into our own healing process.
Yeah.
And then also like get ourselves out of the way for our babies to come through in like a really clean, clear way.
Exactly.
So for me, I was born C-section, and I had to work through a lot of feelings about coming into the world. Like I just didn't want to be here. I didn't want to come back again. I thought it was a lot of work. It was a body thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to do a lot of work around being born, like not wanting to be here. And that for me led to a pregnancy that was challenging. Not because of my son, but because of my feelings about being in a body.
Yeah.
And essentially growing another body.
Totally. You're really like needing to be present with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise you suffer. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think those are the two, and then, and, you know, obviously there's like a lot of stuff going on within the meridian system, you know, like the meridians that deal with building blood are especially working really hard. The kidney meridian is working really hard. You know, like spleen, liver, kidney, a lot of those yin meridians are working really hard while building a baby. And so nourishing those meridians is really important too. I found that for my kidney meridian, I drank a lot of nettle infusion when I was pregnant. I found that really, 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 really helpful. And then beyond that, I think that's all I can say within my realm of expertise as far as like commonalities.
Right.
Pregnancy is very different for a lot of people, and people experiencing it very differently.
Yeah, that's true. I would love to talk to you about, because you mentioned about connecting with the spirit baby as if it's as it is a guide, essentially, at the beginning. So I often encourage women I work with to not only have a focus on who they want as their physical birth team, but also who do they want in the room as their spiritual birth team. And for some women, you know, they're like, what do you mean? That's kind of new for me. So I'd love if you could talk to us about maybe a few simple ways that people could begin to make contact with guides, you know, just in general, and then how that might play out in a birth. If you want to share about your own story of your own birth and how that worked for you.
Yeah. So this is amazing. You know, I think the most important thing is to really tap into the relationship you have with the divine and the unseen world that's the most comfortable for you. So if you're not comfortable communicating with guides, or the idea of communicating with guides, don't even bother. Like, it's okay. But if you're curious about it, and there's you know, it would make you feel more comfortable and safe knowing that you have a cosmic team of support that's in the room, your cosmic birth doulas, then I mean, like, do it. Really do it. For me, actually, before I talk about me, I think in terms of choosing guides, if there are guides that you're attracted to, guides that appear out of nowhere, you know, that can be a really great step. When I was pregnant with my son, I became really interested in Diana and Artemis, who is I mean, in her temple in Nemi in Italy, they found all of these clay uteruses that were left as offerings to her, either by women who wanted to get pregnant or had successful births because they would pray to her. She is an ancient being who has always been helpful for women giving birth. I remember I was on the way to my friend's birth, and in the car, Diana showed up in the passenger seat. I was like, Diana, why are you here? And she's like, I am here for every birth.
Wow.
I am the like cosmic guide knitting in the corner with the rest of the midwives. And she's one that comes up a lot. I work with Mother Mary a lot in my practice, and in my life, she's one of my primary mentors. And she, when I was pregnant with my son, I built like a huge shrine to her in my backyard and did a huge picture of her, and then got another picture of her. There were pictures of Mother Mary all around my house. So I was like, if she can birth Jesus, then I can, like, she can help me birth my son. So I found her really helpful. And then also Bridget is a wonderful, 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 wonderful guide. And she's so beautiful because she's both Christian and pagan. She was this woman in Ireland, this goddess figure in Ireland, or I see her as a fairy queen type figure. And she was such an integral part of the Irish culture that when the Catholic Church came, she just became a saint and continues to be worshipped. And she is, some say she was the midwife to Jesus. I don't know, actually. Not that I would, but she is also very, very helpful because she is the guide for the threshold. And so when we're working with the threshold, Bridget is really very, very helpful. Birth as a portal, as a threshold experience. And so she's extraordinarily wonderful. And those are the ones that I have worked with for my own experience. But there's tons. I mean, like my greatest, what I would recommend actually is, like, you know, look at your ancestry. Who might your ancestors have been worshiping or asking for help?
Yeah.
There's still gonna be those energies in your DNA of the women who bore the women who bore the women who bore the women, or men, you know, that have created you. There's still those energetic imprints of that devotion in our DNA.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. Oh, I love that. It's so true.
Yeah. And so, like, if you can, if you know where you're from, you know, look into your culture and see, like, hey, maybe, you know, maybe XYZ, you know, Freya, or who knows. And then also, in one of my favorite, when I was a kid, one of my favorite books, not favorite books, my grandpa was a Lutheran minister, and I had to become confirmed as a Lutheran. And my mother didn't give me a choice. And I said, Mom, but I want to be a Buddhist. And she said, here's a good book. And so it's called The Good Heart by the Dalai Lama. And it was all about Buddhist perspectives on Christianity. And I read it, and it's like, okay, he says, there are many boats to cross the river. Just get on one. It doesn't matter what you choose. And he said, often what's the most comfortable is what's familiar to us. So if you were raised in a certain context, you know, choose something that's familiar to you. Something that feels like home. And so I recommend, you know, you don't have to look too far to find guidance.
And how did you experience, talking about that threshold and that portal, how did you experience that part of your birth? If there was a particular part that came up for you where you really felt like you had to cross over, how was that? And like, how did, I know. And how did that help you to get in touch with your sovereignty? You know, like, just talk to us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So I had a relatively easy birth. I had 2 weeks of like pre-labor, what's called irritable uterus, where I had like contractions every night that wouldn't go anywhere, but were still like not go anywhere. That didn't lead to active labor, but I was still actually dilating. So by the time labor actually started, first of all, I was in complete denial. And so I like did not believe I was in labor until an hour before my son was born.
Oh, wow.
And and so I went I still remember we were watching Notting Hill because I told my husband, I was like, I just need to watch something stupid tonight. And I had a TENS unit. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so helpful for me.
Oh, cool.
And I remember that there came a point where I was like, either Hugh Grant is really irritating or like this TENS unit just isn't working anymore. And so I went.
How to know you're in labor.
How to know you're in labor when Hugh Grant is really annoying. And so I went upstairs to the bathroom and I just sat there for, I don't know, God knows like how long. It was forever. And it wasn't forever. It was probably 4 hours. Most of my labor was on the toilet.
Uh-huh.
And I just didn't want to move because every time I moved, the surges would increase in intensity. I just didn't want to deal with that. And so I remember on the toilet where all of us, like everything was black. Everything was black in my eyes and everything. It was just black. One of those moments where it's almost as if you like don't have a body, like your body's dissolved.
Wow.
And I remember like feeling like I was in the womb of all creation.
Wow.
With God, goddess. It's like that name is even too small to describe it.
Right.
And I remember there saying, if you let me live, I will devote the rest of my life to you. And the silence as there is. And then I kind of just came out of it. And then immediately I decided I was going to move off the toilet and take a nap. Or not take a nap, just like get into bed. But what ended up happening was I took a nap, about a 20-minute nap. I didn't know that I had just gone through a transition.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for the next contraction and I fell asleep. And I woke up to the sound of my water breaking.
Oh.
And my son, at that point, we've been communicating a lot. He said, however long it takes for you to get into the birth tub is how long the rest of this birth will take. Was what was communicated to me.
Okay.
And at that point, they had like just finished starting the tub. And I was like, I need to get in there. I mean, like, I didn't say it like that. I was more like, tub. At that point, I was very like
altered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was born like within 45 minutes.
Wow.
So that was a threshold that like
yeah,
into the blackness and feeling like I had to just go all the way there and then come back. And it's nothing you can plan.
Right. No.
I'm sure if I have another child, it's going to be completely different.
Yep. Yep. Oh, that's such a beautiful story. I have chills like the whole time you're talking. Which actually, I'm really glad that you mentioned the nap part, because I just want to pause and say quickly for anyone watching who is not aware, this is actually a really important phase of labor. I know you've talked about this too. I saw we both posted something on the same day, or so there was some synchronicity with this. Some people call it like the pause and be grateful period, or there's different names for the quietude, and it's this phase of labor that happens usually right when the woman is all the way open and then she's about to push, but she's not quite yet there. And sometimes this part gets rushed, and so I just want to mention this for anyone watching, that this is actually normal to just snooze for like 15 to even half an hour, and then you're ready to push the baby out. So
and it wasn't conscious. It's not like
no, it's not for the woman. It's like just you're just in the flow. And then for the people attending, holding space, that's when it's super important to just be like, okay, she's in that, and not to be like, oh, you're not pushing yet, you're not doing this yet. So that's really nice that you didn't have that pressure on you.
No, well, my doula didn't think that she still thought I was in the first stage of labor.
Oh my God, how funny.
Yeah.
Because you had done all this work previously.
I had done all this work. Yeah. And so she basically like all the signs that you're going into transition or that you're going
Right.
into transition, I had none of those.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah.
I think I'm really experienced with altered states of consciousness. And
Exactly.
like keeping myself together, I guess you could say.
Navigating that. Yep.
Yeah. It's just
Exactly.
like, oh, it's like another day at work, you know? I mean, not actually, but sometimes.
Yeah, but you're ready and willing to dive in, right? And that makes a huge difference, because that's a part of labor where some women will kind of hang on for dear life for a while because they don't understand why everything is dissolving around them, right? For me, that's what happened in my birth. I gave birth almost, I guess it's been 10 years now, and I was definitely not where I am now in terms of my spiritual path. And so I wasn't as familiar with those altered states. And I remember literally the paintings were dripping on the wall. Like, and I was just like, what's happening? And I felt kind of alone in that, And so in this summit, I really also I keep kind of mentioning this in a lot of the interviews, like this phase of labor, because I think it's also kind of misunderstood, of like that dissolving or that really altered state. It's really, really, really normal and good. And it's about crossing that threshold, right? So, yeah. Did you lose me? It says my internet is a little unstable.
Yeah, I heard you. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The video got fuzzy, but I think we're okay.
For those watching, I am in Mexico and I'm doing the best that I can, but hopefully we'll get there. Yeah, so for those of you who may not know yet, you are an expert on working with flower essences. So I'd love to jump into that and to talk about how flower essences can support women during pregnancy, maybe even before when they're trying to conceive, during pregnancy, and postpartum. And first, maybe if you want to briefly say what a flower essence is for those who may not know.
Totally.
Yeah.
So flower essence it's a signature of a flower imprinted in water and preserved in alcohol. They come in, I've got one right here. They come in little dropper bottles. This is an interesting one to have just chosen. But they come, it's water hemlock. It's a very poisonous plant. Anyways, it's for altered states of consciousness, actually.
That's funny.
But yeah, I wouldn't recommend using it during pregnancy though. So they come in these dropper bottles. They're scent odorless. They don't smell like anything except brandy or whatever the preservative is used. And they work a little bit like homeopathy, but they're highly dilute substances. In order to make them, you take a bowl of water and you place flowers on it, and then you put that either in the sun or the full moonlight, and then you preserve it in that water. You preserve that in alcohol, and then you take drops of it in order to do what it is that you want to do with the flower. And so flower essences are one of the least known branches of herbal medicine, and probably one of the least studied. I think in some ways because they're so cheap and so easy to make. Like you only need a flower in order to massive quantity of flower essences, which is why I see them as the people's medicine, women's medicine in a lot of ways, because they're so easy to make.
Yeah.
And so a flower essence within the herbal community is generally seen as a substance that is going to work with the emotional body. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, our emotions and our physical body are actually one. There's no separation between experiencing anger and the health of your liver.
Right. Yeah.
Worry and your spleen. So and there are a few practitioners who also use flower essences for the physical body, and I do as well. So I'm trained in how to use flower essences to work with women's health. And so there's a lot of flower essences that can be used in all stages of a woman's reproductive life, and especially for conception, pregnancy, childbirth, and the postpartum period. My favorites for also I should say that when we talk about flower essences generally, what's more important is the resonance an individual has with a plant, and the offerings that a flower essence has. So for example, there are many, many different flower essences for conception, but the most important one is to choose the one with the indications that most match somebody's emotional landscape.
Right.
So for example, like I'm working with a woman right now who has not been able to, she's been trying for a few months to conceive, and we've been working on her job actually, because she really feels like she cannot get pregnant in the current job that she's in. Like the workplace isn't set up right. So instead of saying like, you know, I'm going to give you all these like quote fertility boosting essences, like let's work on creating a job environment so you feel like you're safe to conceive a child. So it's a very different approach to fertility. It's very holistic, and aimed at setting up a woman's life so that she can thrive as much as possible in the long term. So that said, as far as conception goes, there are 3 essences that I tend to use more than others. The first one is Easter lily, or white trumpet lily. There's a beautiful book called Plants 7 Herbs, Plants as Teachers by Matthew Wood, where he'll talk about Easter lily. And Easter lily, I do not recommend using while you're actively trying to conceive, because it's a clearing essence. And when a woman is pregnant, we want to be using only building essences. And so if a woman has time, 3 months time, to stop trying to conceive and can work with this essence, it's amazing. So the protocol is to take 1 drop a day for the 7 days before your period starts, and then stop. And you do that for 3 months. The first month is terrible. It like will exacerbate cramps. It will most women have more clots, more mucus, a lot more mucus. Lilies tend to work with it's like Easter lily works a lot with mucus for whatever reason. In the cycle. Oftentimes there's a lot of emotional release too. Easter lily is for the emotional landscape, is for women who have difficulty reconciling sexuality and spirituality.
Interesting.
And I've yet to meet a woman where this is not like something happening.
Some kind of an issue,
Some kind of issue, yeah. And so the first month things are really tough. The second month things tend to get better, but are still like a little bit enhanced, I guess you could say, in terms of sensation. And then by the 3rd month, oftentimes there's a marked decrease in cramps from when the initial essence was started, and you know, more like bright red blood, etc. So there's a clearing and a cleansing process that happens with a specific flower essence that then leads to women conceiving, because it's like all this stuff has been cleared out in order to make space for a child. And the children, these like high frequency babies coming in, can be really picky. They're like, I want this out before I'm here. I don't want to take this on. And so anyways, I highly recommend. I've done this twice now. It's really useful, even if a woman isn't trying to conceive this but has difficult menstrual cramps. It works. I mean, like, it works really well. I used to have terrible cramps, and now have like a whisper.
Amazing.
And it's just through flower essences. Yeah. So there's that for conception, which I really recommend. There's also Forget-Me-Not, which is you can take every day, 3 drops 3 times a day. That'll help connect you to the spirit of your incoming child. And then I also really recommend mugwort essence. Again, I would not take mugwort essence if you're actively trying to conceive, because it's a releasing essence, but it's related to, it's in the Artemisia family with Artemis and Diana. And mugwort has an affinity for fertility for whatever reason, this mugwort essence. And it's useful for women who see themselves as psychic or clairvoyant or intuitive in some way.
Cool.
Is when I like to use it. It's really nice to take before bed for dreams. But mugwort is also very clearing. And if there's something blocked that needs to be cleared, mugwort will help a lot. So those are the major ones for conception. For the first trimester, I would say it really depends on what the woman is experiencing, what the woman is feeling. I took white chestnut because I'm a worrier. And I found that there was a huge connection between my morning sickness and worry.
Wow, interesting.
So the digestive system in Chinese medicine is run by the spleen. The spleen is for worry.
Right. Okay.
And so by working with a flower essence for worry, we were able to calm my stomach down. And like my morning sickness went away within a few days of actually starting.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
So it really depends on, it also just could have been time, but I think it really helped.
Yeah.
So looking at what's going on, like what might be causing the discomfort, what's happening in a woman's emotional landscape is going to help with that process. I think that white chestnut is really helpful for a lot of women. There's another one called Golden Amaranthus from Delta Gardens. And that one's for letting go. It's not a releasing essence. It's for letting go of control.
You need to do that in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And
so
motherhood and birth.
All the time. So that's a really good one to actually just take the entirety of pregnancy, but also like, especially in the beginning when people really, they're just like, my boobs? What?
Right,
but it's like, it starts right away, right? Where you're like, oh my gosh, I am not running this show. And thank God we're not, like, I wouldn't know how to grow a baby.
True.
But my body does, but my body does. So like, I'm gonna give her the reins. So Golden Amaranthus is a really good one there. And then also Delta Gardens has a moonlight essence set, essences that are just made in the moonlight. And all of those are really lovely because they've got it, they seem to match the frequency of the baby a little bit more. And so every formula that I give for a woman who's pregnant, including myself, I would include a moonlight essence or a lighter, like more etheric type essence for the baby. It's like the baby gets that little essence, so they know, you're coming into an environment where people care about high frequency energy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I found those to be really helpful. Second trimester is a mixed bag. It kind of depends on what the woman is going through. And then third trimester, I found that manzanita is really helpful. Manzanita, manzanita?
Yeah.
Manzanita is for loving your body and feeling comfortable in your body. And I find that a lot of body issues, discomfort being on the earth plane will come up during the third trimester. And so manzanita, shooting star is for people who don't feel like they belong on earth. Rosemary, I should have mentioned rosemary under conception as well. But rosemary is for coming into the physical body and can be, I gave it to a woman once in a formula and then she got pregnant. She was trying to get pregnant. That happened. So yeah, rosemary is really beautiful for that. It'll take scattered soul forces and then bring them back into the physical body. And so that's really beautiful. Especially during the conception and the third trimester. And St. John's wort as well. St. John's wort flower essence also tugs the soul into the body. So that one's really good as well for postpartum.
Okay. Because
And
you're so open postpartum and you're needing to come back down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And with the opposite energetic, actually, moving into labor,
Mm-hmm.
the only essence I really recommend for that, because frankly, like a flower essence has nothing on the mechanics and the physiology of birth.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
like at that point, your body is really
Just,
running the show.
yeah.
But mugwort flower essence helps people feel more comfortable in expanded states of consciousness.
Okay.
And mugwort is also very opening.
Mm-hmm.
And mugwort will call on Diana and Artemis.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's just expansive. So there's actually an oil available from the Flower Essence Society called Mugwort Moon Magic, which is a mugwort infused herbal oil that also has flower essences of mugwort, I think hibiscus and pomegranate in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that during my early labor, and when I rubbed that on my back, it was otherworldly. It was so
wow.
cool.
Cool.
And so those are flower essences I would recommend. And then my number one flower essence for postpartum is elm, which is for overwhelm.
Yeah. Okay.
And for these essences that I've listed, there's 3 companies that would be selling them. There's Delta Gardens at deltagardens.com. There's the Flower Essence Society. And then within the Flower Essence Society, there's a label called Healing Herbs, which has all of the Bach flower essences that I've recommended, which would be the elm and the white chestnut. Red chestnut, which is over concern for the feelings of others, is also really useful at any point during pregnancy if you feel like you're worrying too much about people who aren't you and your baby, or even worrying too much about your baby.
Which is so common, to worry about what other people think about the way you're going to give birth or the way you're going to do whatever. It's something I see so much. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And then there's one more. Motherwort, useful at any phase as well. Motherwort is for boundaries. For maintaining really strong boundaries. I find that especially during the 3rd trimester, it can be really hard as women begin to step over that threshold for people to maintain boundaries.
Yeah.
It's just like things can get really mergy really easily. Even people with the best boundaries, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
And so motherwort is a really, really helpful one. And for all of these, you can take a few at once. You can take one at once. And I recommend taking 3 drops 3 times a day under the tongue.
Wow, what a thorough explanation. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
I'm going to need to like go back and listen and take notes for sure. This is amazing.
I can try to write a list down.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Which actually brings me, before we go to our very last question, your offerings, and I just want to say that I have had the privilege to experience some of your offerings and your flower essences, and they're just magic. So if you want to share anything about what you have going on in particular for moms to be or new moms, what you might be able to offer.
Yeah. So right now I'm offering something called a Flower Angel Attunement, which is a custom flower essence formula just for you, and then a brief email reading, channeling messages from your guides. So if like you did want to know who's going to be with me at my birth, like cosmic birth team, I can just be like, well, I see this person.
Cool. I love that.
So anyways, that's on my website right now. It's a very popular offering. Out of all the offerings I've ever done, one seems to be one that people just keep coming back to. Because compared to my other services, it's relatively affordable. And then you get like this custom thing that you can take with you every month. I send it to you, and I'll send it around the world. And so if you're interested in that, you can just mention that you're pregnant. Because there are some essences that are appropriate and some essences that aren't. The ones that are appropriate, again, are ones that are building, and the ones that aren't are the ones that are releasing. So that would be the one that I would recommend. And then you can always send me an email, Lizzie@awakewoman.com, and I'm happy to put packages together for pregnant women or new moms, depending on your needs too.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So my last question I'm asking everyone, which is, if you could time travel and go back to now that you know all that you know about motherhood and everything that you've experienced, and give yourself one little piece of advice before you had your first child, what would that be?
You can do this. That's what it comes down to. That was the mantra that my husband said to me when he was awake during my labor. He also napped. He also fell asleep. I was just like up there upstairs, my doula husband was sleeping. It was great. But he would always say, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And I still say that to myself sometimes when I'm, running a business and remodeling a house and having a kid and traveling. I travel a lot, and I just say you can do this, and it can feel good. Like, that's the other piece. Or it's like, it can feel good. Mothering can feel good. Even when it's hard, it can still feel good. And then I think, the other piece that's coming up was I took too long to really get dedicated childcare. Like, I was convinced that I was the only person in the world who could care for my child. And it's just such crap. Like, I'm cool, but like, there's so many other people in the world that my son like actually enjoys learning from. I mean, even this morning, I was, we're potty training, and my son didn't want to go potty, and I'm like, Daddy, you really need to go potty before grandma picks you up. And he like throws himself on me. He's like, Grandma, like crying for grandma. Like she's not mean to me like this. Like, she's gonna go potty. Like, okay, fine. Like, it's like he loves hanging out with her. He loves the other woman that takes care of him, who's just down the street. So I wish I had known, like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay if somebody else watches your child.
That's a really good point, actually. And I did another interview with a woman who talks about how in ancient societies, like, that actually, even though they were always attached to another human, that they were actually only with the mother like 50% of the time, because they had this village. And so when we lose this village, and then of course we have our particularities, which is sometimes great and sometimes not so great, right, about how we want things done or not done, then it becomes like this. And I also, it's funny, that would be one piece of advice I would share with myself too, now that I have done it. Like, give yourself a little bit more of a break, you don't actually have to be the only one all the time. So wonderful. Oh, this was so fun, and I know we could talk forever.
I know, right?
But we'll say bye for now, and thank you so much for sharing your beautiful wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for putting this together. I wish I had this when I was giving birth. So
thank you. Yeah. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.